The ageless sea, creator of life and destroyer of being, friend and protector of man through countless centuries, and his most ruthless enemy. From the dawn of civilization, the sea has nourished man's labors and frustrated his ambitions. Its creatures have sustained his body, and its waters have taken his life. Its surface has provided his highways, and its depths have held his secrets. The sea gives and the sea takes, but the gifts outweigh the sacrifices, and man remains the debtor. Those who live by and from the sea are a simple folk, imbued with the simplicity of the elements. For theirs is a life based on the temperament of wood, wind, and water. Theirs a never-ceasing battle with restless tides and rocky headlands. Theirs a commerce little changed since the days of wooden ships and iron men. Commerce to fisher folk means ships. Ships for the tuna, cod, and lobster trade. And the Nova Scotian shipbuilder, by his skill with chisel and mallet, has spread the fame of blue-nose ships along the sea lanes of the world. Occupying a strategic position on the trade routes of the Atlantic is one of the world's great natural deep-sea harbors, the port of Halifax. From this rock-girt gateway, with its wonderful natural harbor, the inspiring history of much of the North American continent has stemmed. Few cities in America can equal the historical background and beautiful setting of this vital seaport. For it is as a port and a garrison city that Halifax has become a stronghold of great traditions. 2 centuries after its founding, Halifax plays the same role in the commerce and the defense of America that it played in the days of its earliest history. In those 200 years, the commerce and the enemy have changed often, but the role of Halifax remains. For Halifax, as Canada's principal open seaport, center of import and export, terminus of a transcontinental railroad and the seat of government, has adapted to its commerce in peacetime the lessons that it learned in the chaos of war. Yes, the role of Halifax remains. And in September 1939, when the reverberations of war shook the world, the enemy was once again to be reminded of the importance of that role. A nation must be forthright, for the art of war is largely the ability to marshal the entire resources of a people: ships, tanks, planes, and guns. But for the tanks, planes, and ships, men were needed. And on the storied cobbles of Halifax, the tramp of armed men beat a savage rhythm. War, 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 war. Other cities may proudly look to their past, but for Halifax, history is always in the making. World War II was, to a dominant degree, a war of supply. For the Allies, a war of supply by sea. And for 6 long years, the ordinary citizen of Halifax had a rail seat at the spectacle of war, a rather uncomfortable rail seat. It has been said of Halifax Harbor that all the navies in the world could shelter there. But the harbor had far greater importance. Vast convoys of merchant ships could be assembled and loaded there in perfect security, several hundred miles closer to the ragged edges of war. For this, the free peoples of the world need be grateful. Here, too, in all their awesome might, lay the fighting ships necessary to protect shipping on the Atlantic, or to put a halt to hostile movements. For almost as tightly as Gibraltar controls the Mediterranean, can Halifax control access to St. John, Boston, and New York. Early in the war, when the United States exchanged ships for British base sites, Halifax had one of its more unusual experiences. For here, in the form of 50 destroyers, was tangible evidence of the community of interest between the British and American people in the protection of a whole hemisphere against a common enemy. But perhaps the story of Halifax is best told in the names of the ships that moved through her waters. For the heavily loaded freighters, tankers, and grain carriers that accepted Halifax hospitality bore names that spoke eloquently of the ends of the earth whence they came. There were names that spoke of fighters, names that spoke of non-belligerents, and names that spoke of those who had fought but could fight no more. It is an axiom of warfare that the confusing target is difficult to hit. Ships of war, totally exposed to the mercy of faster, more powerful craft, and prey to unseen raiders of the deep, must rely on illusion to protect themselves. And camouflage became the order of the day. In war, it is always the quick or the dead. The Haligonian, long inured to the sights and sounds of war, accepted the metamorphosis from sleek peacetime cruiser to efficient fighting ship as a natural sequence of events. For him, the way of the sea is the way of life. For him, the bizarre patchwork patterns and deceptive designs of the camouflaged ships represented a simple attempt to emulate nature. For in nature, as in mankind, survival of the fittest sometimes means survival of the best dressed. But all of this great work, this preparation and camouflage, this movement of men and machines had but one primary objective: the safe transport of men and supplies to the fountainhead of battle. As the terminal of the Empire's lifeline, embarkation point for Canada's manpower, and assembly point for the great convoys, Halifax accomplished a task of international seamanship and mobilization that remains one of the shining performances of the Allied war effort. The expert handling of thousands of troops and the efficient shepherding of convoys to Europe, Africa, and Asia told the uninitiated that Halifax was accepting her war part cheerfully and ably. She had been here before.